According to findings in a national report entitled The Happiness Index, Love and Relationships in America, conducted by the Harris Interactive, it found that 64% of Americans are satisfied with their relationships, and 50% of Americans say that they're satisfied with the quality of their sex life. The question still remains, however, how can we ensure total relationship unity and satisfaction? Garrett Lange may be the source to the answer to that very question. He is a relationship coach with a passion for helping couples learn the skills of effective communication. He joined me this week to have a conversation about love, relationships, and yes, of course, effective communication. I'm Kevin McShane. Let's have this conversation. Absolutely. So, Garrett, if you're ready, I'll welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you about relationships. Great to see you today, and thank you so very much for being here.
Yes, thank you again. I've really enjoyed preparing for this and looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Garrett, I know that you have a passion for helping couples sort of get in touch with their communication skills. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about it, Bonnie.
Absolutely. You know, I haven't always been a relationship coach, and for a lot of my adult life, I was the guy who should have been hiring a relationship coach, and I struggled a lot with communication in my first marriage. I was married for 18 years, and it ultimately landed in a divorce because I didn't acquire the skills. I didn't know how to deal with building communication and resolving difficulties, and when that came to an end, I really had to take a hard look at myself and realize that I was the problem with my relationship. And so I got really devoted to trying to understand what I did wrong in the past and what I needed to fix about myself, about the way I approach relationships, the way I approach communication. And since then, I've been remarried, and the difference has been night and day. And so I'm extremely excited and passionate about helping people learn how to make that transformation that I've experienced in my own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we look at relationships, Karen, I'm also curious to ask you about the notion of sort of picking the battles in relationships and really understanding what's worth fighting for when you have that disagreement. How do you bridge the gap or the rift in your mind? I'm curious.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And if you think about the idea of picking your battles, I mean, that entire frame sets it up as if your marriage is just nothing more than a series of battles. And also the idea that it has to be a battle at all can also be, the wrong framework with which to approach a situation. If I enter a situation and my idea is that I'm going to battle, then my attitude isn't going to be set to compromise, understanding, empathy. It's going to be set to winning, right? Because that's what battles are. It's an attempt to win. And so when we decide that, hey, I have to pick my battles, if that's the way I view my relationship, then I enter into all of those interactions with the wrong mindset and the wrong attitude. And inevitably that ends up leading into contention and fighting and arguing, and that somebody has to win, somebody has to lose mentality. And so I really try to help couples understand how to take the approach of we're the team, and together we're going to learn how to understand each other and come to those middle ground compromises that everybody can walk away from saying, I feel good about that.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about team building skills, when you go through the process or the understanding that is a unit, what do you think is the first couple of keys to effectively being a team builder in a relationship?
Yeah, so some of the first things I start to teach couples is a few principles. The first one being you have to learn to seek to understand them before you try to get them to understand you. And a lot of times, and I was guilty of this too in my own past. I was convinced that if I could just explain myself better, if they could just understand my point of view, everything would get fixed. And that's really the wrong approach. And so I try to help couples seek to understand before they seek to be understood. And, and then another principle that I always encourage couples to learn is you have to prioritize the long-term success of your relationship over the immediate personal feeling of needing to vent or needing to burn off your steam. And a lot of times, those tensions build and eventually somebody gets angry and then the conversation blows up. And that's really a selfish notion because it prioritizes my own desire to release this pressure and this anger and this frustration, right? Because that doesn't help anything. And so helping couples to keep in the forefront of their minds that the long-term success, the growth of the relationship needs to be the most important aspect. And so if you can keep that at the forefront, how you approach those conversations can be better controlled.
Yeah, absolutely. And Garrett, I know that you recently published a book, so congratulations on that. It's called Relationship Rescue, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. So tell me all about the book and the publishing process and how that went for you, Bonnie.
Yeah, so the book's basically addressing a lot of the struggles that I had and that I grew through. And, a lot of the marriage books that I had read, were basically a do this, do that. And I struggled to really apply those to my own situation. And so I wanted to write a book that was a little bit different. Being a coach, a certified coach, I wanted to write a book that takes people through the process of their own self-discovery and helps people to learn principles that they can think through for themselves and apply to their own unique situation. And ask questions of them. Each chapter has some questions that are intended to be like a coaching session as they read the content, and then they come to those questions at the end so that they can apply those principles to their own situation and really feel like they're being coached through the communication process. So I loved writing the book. It took me, I think I spent about 4 or 5 months writing the book, and then I self-published through Book Locker Publishing. And it was a really smooth process. I enjoyed it immensely.
Well, that's terrific. I wish you the best of luck with the book, Bud. And I'm also curious to ask you about the notion of forming what I call a two-handed or two-handed circle, where you really lock into your partner and not allow anyone like the external noise to affect your relationship. So I'm curious about your opinion on the notion of building a two-handed circle.
Absolutely, and that's a great question. A lot of times outside influences can be a huge distraction, and there's two specifically that I'll make mention of. The first one is the distraction of not being 100% committed to your partner. And so oftentimes, when I'm coaching couples, or even just, seeing different people comment on social media, you can tell that a lot of people they're 80% in, they're 90% in, but they've got this, kind of one eye still on the prowl, looking to see if a better option comes along. And you're not going to get the results in your relationship you want if you're not all in. And so that first distraction is not being completely committed to the success of your own immediate relationship, because You're either entertaining the prospect of something else, someone else coming along, maybe somebody better is going to be out there. So, I mean, it's one thing to be in the dating mindset, but you have to recognize that there's limitations to the growth you're going to get in a relationship if you stay in the dating mindset. But then the second distraction is the expectations that other people put on you in your situation because of what they believe a normal relationship should be, or what they think, you know, the expectations for any given situation should look like. And so a lot of times couples will self-impose strain on their own relationship because their friends or their family or there's somebody, their bestie, is telling them, hey, you know, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your whatever shouldn't do that. They shouldn't act that way. They shouldn't be doing this. They shouldn't be doing that. And really, what's best for your relationship is what you and your partner think work best for you. And so don't allow somebody else to start to define the parameters with which you should be operating in your own relationship, because what you and your partner communicate between the two of you and the agreements and the compromises that you're happy with should be what you move forward with.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about bridging the gap of trust, if there's a breach of trust in a relationship, how do you think we go about repairing the rift or the breach of trust?
Yeah, great question as well. You know, I did write a chapter on this in my book about rebuilding trust. And the first thing that's important to know when it comes to building trust is the person who's trying to rebuild it doesn't get to say when it's rebuilt, right? Because everybody gains and builds trust at a different pace. And since trust is nothing more than an emotion tied to a belief, we have to keep in mind that those beliefs are accumulated through evidence. Just like a courtroom case, you know, right? Certain people require more evidence. And so if we're somebody that feels like, hey, I need to build more trust, well, then we have to be willing to put in the work, whatever amount of work our partner requires of us to reach that level of trust. And so often I'll see couples where there's a breakdown in trust and somebody has, you know, maybe they've put in 2 weeks or they've put in a month worth of, you know, good behavior, so to speak, trying to rebuild trust. And then they get upset when the trust isn't there. Almost like they feel like they've done enough and it should be there now, and they don't think they should have to do anything else. And so recognizing that the trust has to be pursued to whatever end it takes. Now, there is a flip side to that question, which is if you're the person who is trying to give trust, at some point you have to be willing to start giving it. Because if you never are willing to let the other person feel like they're making any progress, or if you're of the mindset that you just are never going to get over it, you're never going to let that trust process start to begin, you need to make a decision. Because either you need to exit the relationship if the offense truly was something that you don't believe you will ever get over, you need to exit the relationship, because you're not doing anybody any favors by hanging on to a situation that you're not able or willing to forgive in and give a second chance to. All you're doing is delaying the inevitable in that case. So there's responsibilities on both sides.
100%. And Garrett, I'm curious to get your perspective on what do you think it means to be in a committed relationship?
Well, I'm going to give you my opinion on that. Everybody probably has their own idea. My idea is that I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize the relationship. You know, and when we think about what does it mean to be committed, right, that word intends a certain level of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be successful, right? You know, we talk about people in business, they say, hey, they're committed to their business, and people understand that to mean they're going to do whatever it takes to succeed. And so being committed in a relationship is being willing to do whatever it takes to make that relationship work, and to start really prioritizing somebody else's needs above your own. Because ultimately being in a relationship is really about finding somebody who you can meet their needs and they can meet yours. And so having that mindset that says, I'm going to do what it takes to meet their needs and make this dynamic a success.
Yeah, absolutely. And Garrett, I'm also curious to ask you about The idea of constantly being intentional, in the sense of being invested in the relationship and always being conscious of the other person's needs. So what do you think it means to be intentional and invested into a relationship?
Yeah, it really comes down to not letting ourselves get comfortable. And that can be difficult because 90% of our lives are lived kind of subconsciously through the habits that we create. And so we like to create our lives around what is comfortable, what's normal, what we can get into the routine of, but that oftentimes doesn't lead to success in a relationship, because when we get comfortable, we let our guard down and we stop doing the things that fill the emotional tank of one another. And so it's really important. No relationship is an accidental success, right? It takes work, and it does take that intentionality of purposefully considering on a daily basis, what does my relationship need today? What does my partner need for me today? And so as we get in that, make that routine, that growth mindset part of the normalizing of our relationship, then the relationship never gets stagnant and it never gets stale.
And to that end, what do you think is the key to establishing relationship longevity or a sustainable relationship?
Well, I truly believe, and this is why I wrote the book, I believe that effective communication is the key. And the reason I say that is because learning to overcome a hurt or a problem requires effective communication. Learning to build each other up and be the support for one another takes effective communication. Building trust takes effective communication. Even the physical aspect of a relationship, whether it's the sexual side or just the cuddling, we have to learn how to communicate to each other what works for us, what doesn't work for us, what connects with us and what doesn't. There's really no part of a relationship that doesn't require communicating. And so I really believe if a person can learn the skills of effective communication, every other aspect of the relationship can be built.
Yeah, I consider Orlando to be my second home, and I know that you live down there, buddy. So tell me, what's the best part about living in Central Florida? I'm curious.
The best part of Florida, well, I would say, I suppose, instead of just the weather, just having things to do, and there's a lot going on, but there's a lot of family friendly activities, and I've really enjoyed it. I have 4 kids, and they're all teenagers, and so having a lot of activities to do is another thing I really love about Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're not working, buddy, what can we get you doing for fun? I'm curious.
My wife and I love to karaoke. We go out singing all the time.
Very cool. What's your favorite karaoke song, buddy?
My favorite karaoke song, I do like "Faithfully" by Journey. We sing that pretty regularly.
Well, that's a good selection there, bud. So my final question for you today has to do with your own personal or professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
I want my legacy to be that I cared about people and that I went out of my way to make an impact and make a difference in the lives of others. I think that's probably what a lot of people would like to see, is that when they're gone, there's people still left behind that can say, what, Garrett made a difference for me. And that's part of the reason I wrote the book. I wanted to kind of give something back to the world that will last longer than I do. So that's what I want my legacy to be, is that I cared for people.
Yeah, 100%. And buddy, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
They can either chase me down on Facebook and send me a message, or they can send me an email. My email address is garrett.lang.leadership@gmail.com. I probably won't give you my cell phone number here on the air, but Facebook or email is just as well.
Fantastic. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation about sustainable relationships, and I want to thank you for your work in the space. And Time on my behalf. It's most appreciated, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much. I've enjoyed our conversation.